If a member of your family were possessed by an evil entity and you found yourself trapped in the same building during an earthquake, what would you do? Hey guys, in this video, we're going to recap and discuss the best decisions to survive the demon in Evil Dead Rise. It all begins with Teresa sitting by a lake trying to read her book until she almost loses her neck to a drone controlled by her cousin's insensitive boyfriend, Caleb. When Caleb shows up, Teresa asks about her cousin's condition, but he responds callously, stating that he sedated her to stop her from bothering him. With a partner like that, who needs demons? Frustrated with the response, Teresa goes to the cabin to check on Jessica's condition, who was unconscious due to medication and unresponsive to questions. Teresa decides to stay by her side, but suddenly, Jessica rises and starts speaking in a terrifying voice, repeating the exact words from Teresa's book, even though she's facing away. Teresa realizes that something is terribly wrong with Jessica, who suddenly stops talking and vomits a green substance. When her cousin tries to help her, she is attacked and seriously injured. Miraculously, her cousin survives and rushes to the lake to seek help from Caleb, who watches helplessly as Jessica takes the drone and uses it to injure herself severely before falling into the lake. At that moment, Caleb regains consciousness and tries to save his girlfriend but is fatally wounded and decapitated by the entity. Subsequently, the entity takes full control of Jessica and emerges from the waters, floating. Okay, Teresa should have immediately realized that something was wrong with her cousin. Considering the distorted voice and strange circumstances, approaching someone clearly possessed was a bad idea. As for Caleb, he could have used common sense to come out of this situation unharmed. Jessica showed clear signs that something was very wrong, including the attack on Teresa and a completely altered physical appearance. Therefore, it doesn't make sense for him to venture into the water after her. After these events, we are taken one day before this tragedy and meet Beth, a guitarist from a band who was deeply concerned about the possibility of being pregnant. So, she took a pregnancy test that came back positive, leading her to make the decision to leave her rock star life behind and visit her older sister's house. Speaking of her sister, Ellie was going through a tumultuous time with her three peculiar children. Bridget was the gothic girl who preferred to dress in black. Cassie, the youngest daughter, had a strange interest in cutting the heads off dolls, and Danny, the young musician who dreamed of becoming a DJ. Suddenly, Ellie heard someone ringing the doorbell and went to answer it, resulting in a shock followed by a punch to her sister's face. After this warm welcome, Ellie shared the news that she would have to move in a month due to the demolition of the building she lived in, as the structure was severely compromised and few residents remained in the place. Everyone sat at the table to receive gifts from Aunt Beth. She asked Cassie why she was carrying a stick made from a doll's head, and the girl responded with a story about the building being constructed on top of an old bank and supposedly having a ghost of a teller wandering the hallways. Ignoring this strange tale, Beth mentioned that she brought a special mug for the children's father. At that moment, Ellie asked her kids to go out and buy some food and revealed to her sister that she had separated from her husband, and he was no longer present in their lives. Beth wanted to know why Ellie hadn't told her sooner, and Ellie explained that she had called her twice 2 months ago but didn't get an answer. Beth realized she had let her sister down and went to the bathroom to listen to Ellie's voicemails. Her sister asked the reason for her visit, and Beth replied that she had made a mistake and needed help to fix it. Meanwhile, the young ones returned to the building, but before reaching their apartment, an earthquake began, causing a large crack in the floor, and Danny decided to explore the hole. However, as Bridget had warned, it was not a good idea to enter that hole, as there could be aftershocks resulting from the initial earthquake, although the chance was small. Furthermore, Ellie had already mentioned that the building's structure was weak, increasing the risk of collapse. The youngsters should have stayed close to a car, preferably under it, to avoid being hit by debris from the building, and at that moment, the safest option was to leave the garage and go outside to avoid being buried in the hole. Danny noticed that the crack led to what appeared to be the old bank vault and began to investigate the boxes there. He found extremely old items dating back to 1923, including a photo of clergymen holding a book and some vinyl records that he'd planned to listen to later. While rummaging through the boxes, Danny started to hear strange noises around him and got frightened when a statue of Jesus fell on him. At this point, he noticed that several rosaries and crucifixes were hanging over what seemed to be a tomb with a crack at the base. Inside it, he found a mysterious package, and curious, Danny opened it, and a variety of insects came out, revealing an enigmatic book. Meanwhile, on the upper floors, Ellie was worried about her children, who weren't answering their phones and had been missing since the earthquake. She left her apartment and was approached by Gabriel, who offered to help her find them but went to get his car keys first. While they were talking, Fonda appeared, asking if anyone had seen her cat, which had hidden in the pipes because of the earthquake. At that moment, the children emerged from the elevator, leaving Ellie relieved to see them safe. Upon returning home, Danny showed the book to Bridget, thinking it might be worth money since it was an antique and his mother needed some cash. However, Bridget did not like that discovery at all. Nevertheless, Danny attempted to open the book to see its contents, but the cover appeared to be stuck. In the process, he ended up cutting his finger on what seemed to be teeth on the cover, causing the book to mysteriously open. He saw several illustrations of demons causing brutal deaths, and his sister immediately closed the book and ordered him to put it back in the tomb. Danny argued that their mother wouldn't let them go out again and promised to return the book the next morning. However, when Bridget left, he decided to open the book again to continue exploring its content. It seems Danny didn't think much about the implications of the discoveries he made. The religious objects and the insects coming out of the package suggested that there was something sinister related to the book and the tomb. It would have been wise to leave everything as it was, considering that the objects appeared to be there to seal or ward off some evil entity. Moreover, the idea of taking the book home thinking it might be valuable was questionable, as if it were so valuable, the owner probably wouldn't have left it inside a vault for so long. It's possible that the person didn't forget the book but rather left it there with the intention of it being forgotten to avoid further problems. After all, the book contains drawings of demons and spirits on its pages. Bridget was quite patient in allowing her brother to keep the book until the next day when she could have simply told her mother what happened and asked to throw the book back into the hole or even toss it out the window and let it become someone else's problem. Furthermore, the fact that the book only opened after Danny bled onto its teeth further reinforces the idea that it had a connection to the supernatural. However, the boy chose to continue playing with it, unaware of the terrible consequences that awaited him. After examining the book, Danny began listening to the vinyl records on his devices. For some reason, the record started producing extremely distorted sounds. He then decided to play it backward and heard a sinister message. A church member had gathered everyone in the synagogue to make a request because, on one of his missionary trips, he had found one of the 3 volumes of the Naturum Demonto, the Book of the Dead, which was bound in human skin and written in blood. He wanted the church's permission to decipher the secrets within its pages, but everyone was against it and wanted to destroy the book, even knowing the seriousness of the situation. However, Danny thought it was a good idea to continue listening to the next record. The same clergyman, with the help of a priest, began translating the symbols and discovered an incantation that could summon a spirit into the human world. Priest began reciting the spell, and the book started moving on its own. Danny tried to stop the playback several times, but a supernatural force prevented him, and his mother, who was taking the elevator to the laundry room, was attacked by a spirit. The elevator went haywire, shooting up several floors at high speed, and when it was all over, his mother had lost consciousness. Upon waking up, she found herself trapped, but when she tried to escape, she was repeatedly attacked by an invisible creature that screamed in her ears. When she thought it was over, she was grabbed by a cord around her neck. Despite her attempts to balance herself, the entity pinned her arms and legs, causing serious injuries and possessing the woman, resulting in a blackout throughout the building. Terrified, Danny closed the book, trying to pretend that none of it had happened, unaware that he had just condemned everyone in the building. When the boy heard the first record, the extent of the problem he had gotten involved in became clear, and it wasn't necessary to listen to the second one. If it were me, I would have immediately taken measures to deal with the cursed book, such as burning it or tossing it back into the hole where I found it, destroying the records to prevent anyone from releasing the evil contained in them. When the device began reciting the incantation, instead of trying to pull the record, I could have disconnected it from the power or even damaged the equipment with some object. Any action would have been better than summoning a demon into your home. As for Ellie, unfortunately, she couldn't have avoided the encounter with the entity because she knew nothing about it. However, if she had followed her own advice not to use the elevator after an earthquake, she would probably have been safer. Elevators, being fragile structures, can easily collapse after an earthquake. While everyone was concerned about looking for Ellie, Bridget saw her mother enter the house in a strange and silent manner. They gathered in the kitchen to check on Ellie's condition, but she began breaking eggs into a frying pan while talking about a dream in which she could possess everyone's bodies so the family could be united again. At that moment, Ellie regained consciousness briefly, mentioning that something was inside her, and then fell to the floor, writhing disturbingly and vomiting abnormally. In a final moment of sanity, she pleaded with Beth to protect her children and passed out. Beth and Danny tried to take Ellie to the hospital, but the elevator was out of service, and the stairs had collapsed during the earthquake. Beth asked for help from Gabriel and Fonda, explaining that her sister was acting strangely and was now unconscious. Gabriel tried to close Ellie's eyes, but they opened without apparent reason. Faced with the situation, he decided to say a prayer and suggested going down the fire escape to trigger the alarm and ask for help. However, Fonda pointed out that the fire escape was located inside an abandoned apartment and that to access it, they would need to break down the extremely sturdy metal door. However, they didn't have the proper tools to perform this task, but Gabriel was determined to try to open the door and dedicated some time to it. Fonda then mentioned that she had a shotgun and suggested shooting the padlock, but Gabriel declined, fearing that the gunshot noise might further affect the children. The lack of power didn't seem to be caused by a common blackout or the earthquake, because if that were the case, the entire city would have lost electricity when the earthquake occurred, which didn't happen. Without access to the stairs and elevators in such an emergency situation, the group could have improvised a rope with bed sheets to lower someone to the lower level. It appeared to be a relatively short distance, and even if it were longer, it would still be possible to descend, albeit riskier. With the improvised rope, they could have lowered all the children and instructed them to run to the police station, fire department, or any well-lit place to seek help. And Danny, who knew what was happening, should have shared that information with the others as quickly as possible before it was too late. Meanwhile, the men continued searching for an exit while Beth was near her sister's body, mourning the loss and expressing her sorrow for never hearing her advice again. At that moment, Beth's phone started playing Ellen's voicemails. However, a new message appeared, where Ellie was asking for help, claiming to be burning alive, which Beth interpreted as a common fever. Discovering that her sister was alive, she asked the children for help and took Ellie to the bathtub with cold water. However, when she placed Ellie in the water, the woman began to convulse and suddenly jumped to the ceiling, letting out a scream that echoed throughout the building and shattering the bathroom mirror. Then, she fell back into the water, leaving Danny concerned for his mother. However, the creature that emerged from the water claimed that Ellie was infested with worms. Beth and Danny tried to escape, but the creature grabbed a piece of the broken mirror and advanced toward Beth, injuring her hand. Bridget ordered the creature to stop, and the demon replied that it didn't know what was happening with Ellie, but at least now she was free from her family's leeches. The creature advanced toward the young girl, covered in her own blood. However, before the demon could complete its attack, Danny intervened and saved her, using a chair to push the entity away. At that moment, Gabriel appeared to check on the situation but was attacked by the entity, which leapt onto him and bit out one of his eyes. Beth took advantage of this opportunity to close the door, ensuring her safety and that of the children. After saving herself, Beth peeked through the keyhole and witnessed the tragic fate of the other residents, quickly being eliminated by the demon. Unfortunately, Gabriel would not be able to speak again after that brutal attack. However, Fonda showed courage and went to her apartment to get the shotgun, firing at the creature in an attempt to stop it. However, her efforts were in vain as the monster continued to attack and finally killed her. As for Ellie, even if she had a fever instead of being possessed by the demon, placing her in cold water would not have been a wise choice, as it could have caused thermal shock, increasing her heart rate and leading to serious complications. As for the boys, they witnessed their mother performing supernatural actions, such as climbing walls and emitting bizarre screams, but chose not to intervene and help Beth. Gabriel's arrival ultimately served as a distraction for the demon, allowing Beth to close the door. At this point, the best strategy would have been to barricade the door with heavy objects to prevent the monster from opening it. However, the creature apparently did not possess supernatural strength, suggesting that perhaps it could be physically confronted. On the other hand, Fonda's decision to return to the hallway was questionable, considering that the demon seemed only interested in Beth's family and allowed the elderly man to escape to his apartment in search of the weapon. Fonda could have simply locked her door and remained on guard with the gun, ready to confront the creature if it attempted to enter. After witnessing the death of all the other residents, Beth tried to seek help through the window, but no one seemed to hear her desperate cries. After all the events, Bridget noticed that her mother was starting to resemble the illustrations in Danny's book and began arguing with him. However, Beth intervened and separated them, reminding them that they should never turn against each other. Feeling remorseful, Danny decided to share the Book of the Dead with Beth and explained that he had listened to a record with a priest reciting strange words, shortly after which his mother was possessed, and Danny felt that it was all his fault. Meanwhile, Cassie noticed that her sister was behaving strangely and questioned her. The girl, however, claimed to be fine and went to the bathroom to clean the wound on her face. There, she noticed a dark and strange stain spreading, resulting in a liquid resembling tomato sauce dripping from her eyes and nose, causing suffocation and leading her to spit out a mixture of blood and insects. In parallel, Cassie heard her mother singing outside and went to see what was happening. Ellie approached the peephole and claimed that the girl's father was with her, waiting to hug Cassie and reunite the family. Deceived by the demon, Cassie opened the door and was attacked by Ellie. However, before something terrible happened to the little girl, Beth managed to intervene and lock the door again. Cassie clearly needed supervision to prevent this from happening again. Believing that everything was fine with her mother after witnessing her violence was a terrible decision, even for a child. While everyone recovered from the shock, Beth heard noises coming from the kitchen and found Bridget eating glass to get rid of the insects in her stomach. Beth tried to retreat but stumbled and fell, allowing the demon to attack her, injuring her leg with a grater. Fortunately, she managed to fend off the creature before it could cause more harm. At that moment, Danny arrived to see what was happening, and the creature followed him to his room, where it tried to attack Cassie. She managed to defend herself using her doll's stick, piercing the creature as it attempted to remove the stick, ultimately finishing it off. Beth asked her nephew to listen to the vinyl record, hoping it contained words that would help combat these monsters. Danny explained that the equipment wouldn't work without power, so Beth showcased her talents and assembled a makeshift battery, easily connecting the equipment. Next, she handed a knife to Danny and asked him to wait outside with his sister. With headphones to prevent more incantations, Beth began to listen to the recordings. The priest in the recordings admitted that he had made a mistake trying to study the book, as the possessions had spread like a virus, possessing many of his former brethren. The priest then decided that he needed to eliminate them to prevent the disease from spreading further. He took them to a shed and tried to burn them, but the creatures extinguished the flames. Then, he tried to bury them in holy ground, but they resurfaced. While Beth listened to the story, Ellie decided to enter the apartment through the pipes and moved stealthily behind Beth, who remained unaware of the demon's approach. In the recordings, the priest realized that the only way to get rid of these entities was to disconnect their limbs, and that's what he did. However, even then, he was not successful, and he could still hear his brethren calling out to him. The book could not be destroyed, but anyone who found it should lock it in their safe and leave it there forever so that no one else could unleash this spirit into the world. It was impossible to stop the demon, and the evil would not cease until it possessed all those who had summoned it. Even their remains would be pursued by it. The discs were organized in numerical order, and it is undeniable that the priest who made the recordings did not organize the information logically. The fact that the third disc contained contradictory instructions compared to the second is a clear example of this. The story that the book is dangerous could have been more effective if told more directly on the first disc, preventing someone from continuing. As for Danny, his actions continued to demonstrate a lack of discernment. Even after summoning a demon and hearing the account that the spirit wished to eliminate them, he responded to his aunt's cry without taking anything with him to the kitchen, making himself an easy prey. It seems he did not learn from his previous mistakes. Regarding the demon in question, in mythology, these entities are called deities. They are considered parasitic spirits that feed on the souls of mortals and, later, possess their bodies. According to the stories, they originate from corrupt human souls that suffered corruption in hell itself, and possession can occur in various ways, including contact with infected blood, which would explain Bridget's possession. Meanwhile, outside, Danny checks the room to see if his aunt is okay, only to realize that Bridget has freed herself and is about to attack. The two engage in a desperate confrontation, with Danny managing to stab the demon with a knife but seemingly causing no apparent effect. Later, the demon takes the boy to the kitchen and uses the knife to pin him to the counter while pouring a large amount of tomato sauce over him. However, just as it prepares to finish him off, Danny takes a surprising step by turning on the stove and using a flammable spray to set the creature on fire, and it seems that the demon is finally defeated for good. Back to Beth, after finishing listening to the recording, she senses Ellie's presence and tries to attack her, piercing her sister with a screwdriver, although this has no effect. The demon quickly throws Beth through the door, making her see Danny suffering from a fatal blow. Then, the entity grabs Beth, detecting the scent of the baby in her belly and hinting that it will now have 2 souls to devour. However, before anything more terrible happens to her aunt, Cassie throws a pair of scissors in her direction, providing a moment of relief and temporarily neutralizing the demon. The two then run down the hallway, attempting to break open the door to access the fire escape. Although Bridget is part of the family, and everyone feels affection for her, the previous experience with Ellie, who survived a shotgun blast, should have alerted them that Bridget was not completely defeated. A more sensible action would have been to throw her out the window to avoid a possible ambush or lock her in a room, since the demons, despite their supernatural abilities, were not strong enough to break down doors. Any measure that allowed them to gain time to escape would have been wiser than leaving the body there. Furthermore, the demon had the opportunity to enter the house earlier because there were windows next to the door that could have been broken to unlock the door from the inside. Beth, realizing she couldn't break the door's padlock, chooses to grab Fonda's shotgun and some ammunition to shoot the padlock. However, the escape attempt is interrupted when Ellie approaches rapidly. Beth shoots the demon in the leg, immobilizing it. However, before taking the fatal shot, Fonda awakens as possessed and grabs Beth's leg, causing her to miss the headshot and hit one of the demon's arms. At this moment, everyone who had been defeated resumes as possessed, including Danny and Bridget, who approach their mother's body and begin to merge with her, forming a hideous creature. The monstrosity starts proclaiming that everyone will die before dawn, and fearing for her niece's life. Beth drags Cassie into the elevator and tries to descend, but something prevents the door from closing. Cassie realizes that her mother's key is blocking the door and removes it, allowing the elevator to close. However, it begins to fill with liquid, and the creature enters the ventilation, climbing to the top of the elevator in a desperate attempt to reach its prey. However, the excess weight causes the elevator to plummet, landing directly in the parking lot. As soon as the elevator doors open, Beth and her niece manage to escape unharmed. They run to the car, but the tire gets stuck in a hole caused by the earthquake, allowing the demon to approach. However, they manage to exit the car before it can reach them. They try to reach the gate, but it starts closing rapidly, and fearing being trapped with that creature, they run toward the gate, and Beth asks them to roll through the passage. However, the demon grabs Cassie's leg at the last moment, leaving Beth outside. Determined, Beth kicks the gates, and meanwhile, the demon takes Cassie to Fonda's car, where it finds a chainsaw. Beth enters the area and shoots at the demon to distract it. However, the creature hurls the chainsaw at Beth, causing her to fall to the ground. The demon attempts to pull her into a grinder, but Cassie shuts off the machine in time. Beth grabs the chainsaw and pushes the demon into the grinder, instructing the girl to start the machine, causing tomato sauce to spew all over the parking lot. Ellie is the only thing left between the grinder and Beth finishes her off with the chainsaw, putting an end to the demonic threat. Beth consoles her niece, who had to witness her family's deaths, and they soon depart. Sometime later, we see Jessica on the phone, planning a weekend at the lake with her cousin Teresa. When she gets into the car, she notices the parking lot covered in blood and is then possessed by the demon, which is now free to seek Beth and Cassie to harvest the souls of those who summoned it. Hey, guys, this was like surviving the demon in Evil Dead Rise. Do you believe you would succeed in surviving? Share in the comments what you would do differently. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you happen to come across an old abandoned book out there, be careful when opening it. The pages may hide secrets you never imagined.